Good day. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of my series of interviews with hypnotic men. My name is Kelly T. Woods. If you don't know of me, I'm a hypnosis practitioner here in Washington State. I've been in operation for about 20 years now, and I'm so thrilled to present a guest here today who makes me feel like I'm still using training wheels. Uh, Daniel Cleary has over 30 years of experience as being not just a hypnosis practitioner, but a well-respected instructor and mentor. And he has presented at many national and international hypnosis conferences. Notably, he was a course director at Pain Week. And Pain Week is an annual interdisciplinary convention that's held for medical professionals. And he represented hypnosis there for us. So I'm so grateful for that. We know that doctors and related medical people really need to know more about how to utilize hypnosis for their patients. So I'm so proud to introduce Dan here today, and we're going to be talking about all things related to pain and even chronic issues today. And I think that you're going to find this a fascinating event. So Dan, welcome.
Well, thank you. You mentioned Pain Week, and Pain Week was a blast. Michael Elner and I went and were doing that. The first year we went, we were, with our coat and tie and everything, and a little concerned about how the reception would be. We had 4 1-hour classes on the first day of the conference. And after the last class, the director of the program came up and asked us to do all 4 again the next day because too many people just couldn't get in. And it just went nuts from there. We had, starting the second year, they gave us a breakout room, and we would go in and do mini sessions with people and just have any word of mouth, nothing on any of the programs. Word of mouth, we'd get 30, 40 people in there at a time and just go around the room. And because like with hypnosis, the medical field is the same in that many people come into it because they have experiences in their own life that they need to address. And Pain Week, many of the doctors, got into it because either themselves or a loved one has chronic issues with pain. So it was a gas. At one point, one of the attendees, one of the doctors there, came up to us in the main display hall, and he and a friend of his had a bet as to what psychiatrist or psychologist we had trained with, and I laughed all the way through the doors. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here, and it is stunning for me to see the response that we've had for this. I mentioned earlier, I think it was because of my dog Spot in the picture. Those of you who are tuning in because of looking for pain relief in your own life, you can go ahead and take a moment and, you know the routine, take a deep breath. And as we go through the program, you may wonder how things will begin to change. Just going through this, and you can send a chat message to us if there's anything that you want to address. And it'll be just fun. Kelly?
Yeah, thank you. And, I think people would be really interested to hear a little bit more about your background, about your personal experience with pain and how that led you to discover hypnosis.
1978, I took flying lessons from the seat of a motorcycle, and I botched the landing. I have what is called a brachial plexus avulsion. Basically, my right arm went up and behind my head. My collarbone broke, and the arm extended to the point that it pulled the nerves out of my spine. The torn nerve fibers in my spine think that because the spinal fluid going over them and the fact that they're not connected, they are constantly sending me alarms telling me that I'm still in the wreck. And I call it a wreck because I got real tired in the first couple of years of very wise people telling me there are no accidents.
Yeah.
So I see Tamalinda, you're shaking your head. Oh, okay, just an okay. Not I can't hear you.
We hear you fine.
So I took all the drugs, did all the medical stuff, and was getting no relief. I went to a psychiatrist who tried hypnosis with me and convinced me that hypnosis did not work. He had me walking down 20 stone steps into a dark grotto. I like sunshine. I live on sailboats. And he was walking me through this dark tunnel in the stone mountain, and I was blowing holes in the wall to look down at my boat in the inlet down below in my mind. I was convinced that hypnosis did not work, but it reminded me of in the 60s. I was out there doing meditation and all my, both normal and psychedelic. And it reminded me of mind-body connection. And I began doing things on my own. And because I had been, before I had the wreck, I was a carpenter. And so trying to learn how to be left-handed, I went out and bought a sailboat that needed to be rebuilt. And in my travels on my sailboat, many of the people that I encountered working in boat yards and stuff had aches and pains from overwork. And they knew that I had stopped taking drugs. They knew that I was living with a chronic situation. And they would come to me and talk to me about how to ease the discomfort they were feeling. And I would just tell, oh, we'll get to that in a minute. But first, and I'd start telling them stories. And one of the times I was sitting on a big diesel engine of a travel lift, talking to a guy that was lifting my boat out of the water. And I spoke to him about how amazing it was. I was screaming over the sound of the diesel engine. So relaxation and dim lights aren't necessary. And I was speaking to him about, he had told me his back was bothering him. And I was speaking to him about how amazing it was to me to watch him lifting my boat out of the water, and how he could tell by the mast how to align the boat and adjust the strap so that it was lifted in balance and keep everything together and things like that. When we talked and moved the boat up, put it down, chocked it so I could work on it. And when he finally shut off the engine and everything, he came down and he said, my back feels great. He said, I said, oh, well, it's just a story. And he said, no, that's hypnosis. And I said, no, hypnosis. There were no stone steps. And you should get paid for it. I said, oh.
That got your
And
attention.
a week later, somebody said there was a hypnosis course. So I took it. And the funny thing is, first class, first session, first script, 20 stone steps.
Of course. Oh,
So
wow.
that's how I got into it.
That's awesome. I remember my own pain story. We all have one, and unfortunately, more than one sometimes. Was about 8 years ago. Right before Christmas, I fell from a ladder in my garage onto a concrete floor, and luckily, I just had a shoulder dislocation and some damage to the tissue in my upper arm. But it was pretty painful. And being a hypnotist, I prefer not to use medications. I used some that night, but the next day I threw it out. And about a week later, I'm sitting on my couch, miserable, trying to use the power of my mind to make this go away. And I get a phone call, and it's Dan. And I answer it, and he goes, talk to your shoulder. And then he hangs up, and that's it. And I sat there for a while, and then I decided to take his advice. And I had about an hour conversation. And not only did I talk to my shoulder and my arm, but it talked back to me and told me some pretty deep stuff. And from that point on, the healing was really activated, and my comfort levels just dramatically changed. I felt like I was back having more control over it, and that made a big difference to me. So I think that was a really big turning point in how I worked with clients, not just for pain, but for all kinds of things. And of course, then I ran out and bought this book, Targeting Pain by Dan Cleary, which further helped me understand some of the dynamics that he's sharing with us today. And since then, helping people relieve their pain, whether it's acute, chronic, or however they name it, has become really important to me. And in this process, I've heard, Dan, from so many other hypnotists that they really are hesitant to work in this area of our field, that they're resistant to it. Why do you think that is?
Because they were sitting on their couch moaning about their aching shoulder and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
I think that it really comes down to mindset. When you go to the doctor to address acute pain, and acute and chronic are related, but they're really, really different. Acute is part of the healing process, and it's telling you to either take notice of whatever's wrong, or to be careful of this area so that it can heal properly. You said you didn't want to take medications and stuff. After my wreck, I took everything, and found that all it did was make me feel stupid. It didn't really help the most of the pain. When you go to a doctor and they say, okay, and you tell them you've got this pain issue, and they say, okay, here's a medication or a therapy, come back and see me in a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is. You come back and they say, are you still in pain? And you say, yes. And they say, okay, that didn't work. We'll up the dosage or change the therapy or whatever it is. And you go away. Now, the question was, are you still in pain? And the question should be, how much better do you feel? Because you may have had 50% relief, but the question is, are you still in pain? And I think that hypnotists get caught in the either or. Either you're in pain, or in which case it didn't work, or you had the miracle and the person doesn't come back to see you anyway. So getting caught in the either or mentality, and also I think, should look at the situation, or avoid looking at the situation in medical terms, because we're not doctors. I don't treat a disease process or a injury process. I assist the client to alter their perspective and recognize the benefits that they can get. The difference between what you feel and how you feel about what you feel are two vastly different things. I still have 40 some odd years later, fairly intense nerve pain. And most of the time it's over there in some other place. I can keep it from interfering in the way that it used to. When I get tired, when I'm overstressed, things like that, it becomes more difficult. Day-to-day frustrations that are related to the disability and the lack of use of my arm and overusing the other side, those are they still piss me right off.
But Dan, you remind me of what Michael Elner once said. He said that many of his pain clients would say that they know they still have the pain, but it doesn't bother them anymore. And this is something that I have noticed also with some of my clients, where their body probably is not going to fully recover, and yet they have the ability to tune that out in that way. And this is such a fantastic way to use hypnosis. And I think having that expectation and managing clients' expectations, not just our own, but theirs. You have a solution for that too, don't you?
Yeah, I suppose I think I know where you're going with this. You come in and a client comes in to see me, and they begin to tell me about their intractable pain. And my response is, if I could guarantee you 100% relief today, would that be a good thing in your life? What do you think the typical answer is?
Of course.
Okay, that's probably not going to happen. I've seen it, but probably not today. And if I said that I could, you probably wouldn't believe me, because by the time they come to see us for chronic issues, it's been typically anywhere from 2 to 6 years from the onset, because it takes about 2 years to go through the medical model and get the final, we can't do anything for you, we can't help you. And at about 6 years, they give up. So they've already tried so many different therapies and medications and everything that if I said we can get 100% relief today, they wouldn't believe me. And so now that I've said, okay, no, it's not going to happen, not today, they look at me and kind of shake their head, because that's not what they expected to hear. And I say, how about 50%? Would that be a benefit in your life? What could you do now that you haven't been able to do lately if you had 50% relief? could you go out to a movie and sit in a movie theater for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and not have to get up and walk around and move around and do all the, could you sit comfortably for 2 hours? Well, yeah, yeah. Would that be a benefit? Yeah, that would be nice. I could go out with my wife. I could, do this. I could do that. And how about 25%? And I worked them down to recognize what benefits they could get with different levels of relief. So I'm changing the expectation from complete relief to what I can get today. And the thing is, each of you, as I said earlier, many of you anyway, have had painful situations and even chronic situations that you've had to address in your life. If you imagine you're laying in bed at night and you wake up, you have to go use the bathroom. You get up in the middle of the night, and you tiptoeing through the house so you don't wake anybody up, and you stub your toe. Ow, ow, ow. Jumping up and down on one foot, screaming silently into the night so you don't wake the house. You've been there, done that, right? Yeah. Okay. If you forget that your toe is what hurts and the ottoman is probably not going to attack you anymore, then you're going to keep that tension. You're going to keep all that up. And eventually the muscles that are reacting, even though the situation is taken care of, those muscles are going to break down and start having pain, aches and pains of their own. So when I get to 10% solution and the agreement that there's a level that they can understand and comprehend as a benefit in their life today, then even a progressive relaxation will ease those associated aches and pains from all that tension that they carry around, reacting to whatever their the chronic painful signals are. So they get 20 or 30% relief sitting there in your office or in their home, as we're doing virtual so much today. And you at home, wherever you are out there now, can notice how that would play out in your condition, in your situation. So if I can get this kind of relief today, here in the office or in this context, as a first timer, what can I do when I practice this on a regular basis? And one of the things that I like to do at that point is in and out of whatever you want to call it, trance or whatever, so that they can learn to go in and out more quickly. And then I have anchors that I give them, depending on who it is, that they can utilize. One of my favorites is the pinky pump. And we've talked about that, haven't we, Kelly?
We have, definitely, and I have taught it to many of my clients too. But please share this model that you created.
Well, it'd be fun to listen to you tell see how your version is.
Oh, well, especially, okay, I'll give my version of how I took what you taught me. Depending on the client, of course, but many of my chronic pain clients have had an experience of using pain medication. And some of them have been on some heavy doses. I remember one client who was diabetic and had neuropathy, and he was on a course of morphine and another pretty heavy opioid. And his desire was to greatly reduce. He didn't think it was realistic that he would get off of those drugs, Vicodin he was on. And so I introduced him to tenets of mindful hypnosis, which, that's a term that Michael Elner and I bantered about, that meant that people were conscious when they were doing these things. It was a waking hypnosis, self-hypnosis, self-directed approaches. And you guys developed a lot of those exercises with your quantum focusing era. And so I had been teaching this client these self-directed things that he could be doing, and he was having some success. And so I threw the pinky pump in there. And when I said that, it excited his curiosity. He was like, "What?" And I said, "Oh yeah. You remember you told me that you were in the hospital and had a really bad attack." And he also had pancreatitis, which is extremely painful. And they hooked you up to some morphine, and you had a pump there so you could self-apply it when you needed. He goes, "Oh yeah, that was really effective." And I said, "Wait, which hand did you have that near?" He goes, "Oh, it was my right hand." I said, "Okay, just close your eyes and imagine that you have that right now, and you could just activate that button." And he did it. And I saw all the tension just melt out of him. And he smiled, just a great smile. He opened his eyes. He goes, "That is really cool." And that became his favorite technique. And he would just use that when his pain was spiking. And, within a couple of weeks, he was able to get off of the morphine, and he cut the Vicodin in half. And, I got a call from his doctor at the VA and saying, what did you do? And that created, of course, a stream of referrals for me. And I was delighted. I love working with veterans. But it's that simple. And, it reminds me that one of my favorite approaches for helping people is using metaphors. And while we can provide these metaphors, and, this one came from you, the metaphors that they come up with can be even better. And all we have to do is to guide them to a place where their creativity can be inspired and they can come up with that. I've told this story before. I had a client who was a truck driver, and he had lower back pain, which a lot of people do. And there was nothing that really could be done to treat it. He was just suffering. When he was in my office, he couldn't even sit still. He was just moving and shifting constantly, trying to relieve that pain. And I stopped him and I said, if that pain was an animal, what would it be? And he instantly said, "It's a grizzly bear. It's gnawing at my spine." And, even as I heard that, I got that visceral reaction from that. And I said, "Well, what do you want to do with that grizzly bear?" And I said, "I want to put that effer into hibernation." I said, "Well, go ahead and do that. Close your eyes." And he started to describe it, a scene. He was a hunter, and there it was up in the mountains, and the snow was falling quietly. You know how it gets really quiet when the snow comes? Now, you live in Florida, so you don't know it as much as we do here in Northwest Washington, but everything gets very cool and quiet and calm. And then you could see ambling slowly through the snow, past the trees, into the cave the bear goes. And I watched this man's body just settle. And after a while, he said, "And if I do too much, the bear's going to start to grumble." And that was it. He came up with his own protocol. And as far as I know, to this day, this was several years ago, it worked for him. So it can be that easy. And what I love is that when I allow clients to come up with their own solutions, then I can use solutions later by me even telling this story. It's igniting people's curiosity and creativity for themselves. What do you think about that?
Exactly.
Yeah. I know you've done that kind of thing with your stories, but also sometimes people are telling their story, though, maybe not in a helpful way. What do you do when they go on and they get stuck in that loop?
You can, we've all listened to clients do this, and clients and friends and people we meet in this grocery store, and you can tell when they're going into the recording.
Yeah.
And to me, I call it the recording because it's rehearsed, and it's them making sense of their situation in a way that they've practiced it in their own mind, practiced telling it in their own mind. And when I hear that recording come on, there's a change in tone and usually body posture and even the way they're relating it. So when that happens, I like to use a pattern interrupt of any kind. And an easy pattern interrupt is, okay, that's great. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, and they go, what? Wait a minute, I'm not finished. But first, let's play with your imagination. And going back again to the pinky pump, the thing that I find most amusing about it is that when I was a kid, and by the way, I've seen snow. I know what snow is. I wasn't born in Florida. I'm in Florida because I've had too much snow. But when I was a kid, and I grew up to be a goat because I was a kid. Now wait a minute, that's a different story. I would be sent off to camp because my mother just could not handle me at home for 3 months after with no school. And at the camp, they had a water pump, old-fashioned water pump with a handle that you lift and do like this. And the water that came out of that well was it was cold and crisp and pure, and it was just heaven in liquid. And you can imagine what it would be like if that liquid were healing in some way. And all you had to do was lift and drop that pump handle. And that's my version of the pinky pump. Because most people that I know, at least those of a certain age, have seen an old-fashioned pump. Now, there are people on this call who were born in this century, and they may not have seen a pump of this sort, and if they have, it's probably toxic. But those of us with some miles know about the old style pumps. Yes, dear.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so you just really made clear how we can take something that someone teaches us and make it our own. And we know that our clients will do the same thing. It kind of reminds me of that rumor game, right? Where we tell the rumor and then it changes and morphs over time. And I think it's wonderful. And I didn't even remember that, your version of it with the actual water pump like that. And wow, I just have a new layer. Thank you.
Well, and, that client had a pump that worked.
Yeah.
And pump went clang, up goes the little light in your experience mode, and go, oh, okay, Cleary said something about a pump. Okay, let's use this.
Yep, that's exactly how it went. Yeah.
I often say, when you take that medication that you got the relief from, but not 100% relief, but you got some relief from. How long between when you put it in your mouth until you begin to feel relief? And most people will say, well, it takes about 15 minutes. I said, no, really. When you take it, how soon do you feel the relief? Well, as soon as I take it, I know that I'm going to get it, and it feels better.
Yeah.
And then I walk them through how they can feel that when the medication is actually breaking down and going into their system, how it progressively goes through their body, and put that in the pump. Put that in anytime you need to remember this, just remember that the expectation of relief is as powerful as it can be in any given situation for you. So again, using their experience uh, and expectation to find the relief that is useful and available to them virtually instantly during the day. Um, I don't know if people on the call here were, as Kelly and I are speaking, uh, because you can hear the sound of our voice, you don't need to listen to the words particularly to know that you can find relief in the things that we address. And how, even though we're talking about this client or that client, it can apply, like Kelly was saying with the pump. You don't have to get the story exact. It's understanding uh, that it modifies for whoever you're dealing with. Uh, so, what do you think about that? Tell me that.
I'm totally on board with that. And to your point about expectation and belief, our level of expectation and belief plays a big role in that. And when I had asked you earlier, we had a discussion prior to this event, and I had asked you about, that trepidation that some hypnosis practitioners have about working with pain clients. One of your answers to me was really profound, that I hadn't even really thought about it. And you said it's because they don't believe it works. And I mentor lots of people, and I have a couple of fairly large Facebook groups for practitioners. And often I will hear from these individuals, some who have been in practice for years, that they've never really experienced hypnosis themselves. And
They're not paying attention.
Exactly. And so we understand that that's, maybe their understanding of hypnosis is different than what ours is. But what would you suggest for these people? What could they do to build that belief in themselves that hypnosis is fantastic for pain relief, besides be here today?
Well, there's that, yes. Boy, that's a difficult question in many ways, and it's really, really easy in other ways. What would I do? I would threaten them. I'm going to punch you in the nose. What do you think about that? No. Okay. You just went to what it would be like if I punched you in the nose. No. What if I was going to make you feel better in some way? So you know how to do hypnosis. You don't need deep trance to get the effect.
Yeah.
I had a client that was, and this was in my early days, came to me about a painful situation, and I was still using induction, more or less formal inductions, although I didn't dress up for it or anything. But and I was talking to him about making it smaller and cooler, and he looked over and said, "This isn't working." I said, "All right, set it on fire and make it huge." And he goes, "What?" Now we know that you can control it. And that was the turning point for him, because I made it, helped him to make it worse. And that proved to him that we could make it better.
Yeah. Love it. Another question that I often get, not just from potential clients, but from, colleagues, is how many sessions will it take?
Will what take?
That can be a variable. To have relief, to feel better, to be able to get back to work, to have sex again, whatever area in their life is being really impacted by their pain. But and of course, we know that we can't give them a definitive answer on that, but in your experience, what do you think?
I think the first session is the most important. Establishing their ability to make a change, the 10% solution. When they recognize that they can change the way they feel by changing the way they feel about what they feel, then they are back in control. And they may not have total control. There may be, like in my case, I have nerve damage. And short of going back into my spine and doing major things that I may or may not live through, there's nothing that can be done. And even then, I wouldn't get use of my arm back or anything else. I wouldn't get a functional change in my situation. Changing how I relate to that is what makes things functional. For hypnotists, so to the question of how many sessions, it's individual. I had a client that came to me on a referral from a student that I had, and she was dealing with a lot of changes, grief being one of the major ones. Her husband had died, and she was very upset with that. And she was sitting there in my office and doing this, moving and checking her watch and looking at, clearly uncomfortable. The idea of doing hypnosis was space cadets to her. And finally I said, what's going on? And this was when I had moved my office into my home. And she said, well, my dog is in the car. I said, well, bring it in. And she was like, what? Well, she doesn't like men, except my husband. I said, I don't care. I don't, bring it in. And it was one of these little rag, the floor mop, dust mop looking dogs. I don't know, but 10 pounds max, something like that. And just hair, And it came in and it went around the room and sniffed everything and all like that, the way dogs do. And then it came over and it looked up at me, and I turned my seat to face the dog. She looked at me, jumped up in my lap, and sat down. And that was when that client went into deep trance. That client was the only client that I had long term. She came back the following week, and at that time my rates were 200 for the first session and 100 for follow-up sessions. And she came back and she put $200 down on my table, and I said, no, it's, that was the first week beyond that. And she said, I got more in our first session than I got in 4 years with my therapist. That's what you get. And she always just paid me 200.
It's awesome.
Because, so, and she came until she was comfortable in her new life, and feeling comfortable going out in the world, after her relationship, after her husband had died, and identifying herself in the way that it's very difficult at times to recognize ourselves without our partner when we've had a partner for a long time.
Yeah, that's demonstrative that pain comes in many forms, doesn't it? And it's impossible to separate out physical pain from the emotional and mental impacts. And, I recall hearing about, after you had your accident, that your sleep was really impacted for years. And it wasn't really until you delved into these hypnotic approaches, whatever you called it, that you were able to resolve that and you were able to sleep again. And there's that tangled partnership between sleep and pain. And often when I have someone who has chronic pain come to me and I ask how their sleep is, 90% of them say it sucks. It's terrible. They can't get comfortable, or they awaken many times during the night and can't go back to sleep. And sometimes really addressing sleep helps relieve their pain. So I found that I can even prioritize helping them sleep better, because that's such a great area for hypnosis.
Yeah. When pain interferes with your sleep, it screws up your internal clock to the point that it's hard to know what to do. And yeah, when I first saw that hypnotist with the stone steps, I was sure that hypnosis didn't work, but it reminded me of meditation and mind-body connections that I had not even considered, because I was in the medical model of take a pill or a therapy to get rid of the pain. And the idea of calming myself and focusing within myself with this raging pain going on was like, what? And you were talking about the interconnection. This is where what you feel and how you feel about it is a really important thing for clients to get or grok. What you feel is going to affect everything else. And how you feel about it is going to change the way you feel. And, the example I gave of stubbing your toe and all the other muscles tightening up, that separation or that understanding that, okay, I haven't changed the signal. I still am aware of the signal and this painful thing. It's not giving me new information. So I don't have to react in the same way that I have. And I can lay in bed and I can relax the other muscles of my body that are not directly affected by that issue. And that begins to alter the way that you can sleep, uh, eat, everything. I mean, in the first years, it was sometimes difficult for me to eat because I was in so much pain that chewing and swallowing were difficult because I was so tense and so tight from trying to look okay, because people around me were giving me pity parties everywhere I went. I had been a carpenter. I had been a real physical person, and here I am in the first couple of years, and they were putting splints on my arm with rubber bands to hold my fingers up in certain positions so they wouldn't curl up the way they do when you're paralyzed. And all this mechanical crap that was more work than ever, than any benefit that they gave.
We have a oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Well, I was just going to say, typical pain relief, 2 to 6 sessions.
yeah, I concur with that. And one of our jobs for those of us that teach self-directed tools, self-hypnosis or mindfulness, or mindful hypnosis, is to motivate clients to use those things between our sessions. And one of the ways that I do that is by telling them that, you know, I teach this to lots of people, and my clients who actually use it, they get the best success. So I want to inspire them and also give them ideas on how they could use it, maybe using a timer app that would remind them to not wait until pain levels are high or tension levels are high, but to use it to stay ahead of that. And they found that to be helpful too. Once they get it, that it's the regular application, it's the repeated use of these things that can really make that long-term difference for them, then they're usually on board. And when we make it easy and brief, it doesn't have to take 20 minutes of your life, but you can do it in 3 to 5 minutes. There was a Catherine McGlynn mentioned in the chat room that she noted an important word that you used, signal, instead of the word pain. And I appreciate that too. But what do you think of this premise? This has been going on for a long time. And I even remember espousing this, that we shouldn't say the word pain to clients. We should use discomfort instead.
I don't agree.
I agree with you now. I changed my mind several years ago after the first client was offended that I was discounting or reducing the impact by refusing to use that 4-letter word. So why do you feel that way?
Well, it ties into the question or comment from whoever it was that you mentioned, that I refer to it as signal. I will talk about the painful signal and that you have been experiencing, and that objectifies it. It's no longer theirs.
Yeah.
It is the pain. It is no longer theirs. It is the painful signal. It allows for the truth of the situation. Is that how can we begin to make changes that you can recognize, and that ties to 10%. And here again, getting them to remember comfortable times is often very difficult. Getting them to remember painful times is easy. So being lazy, I will say, how do you know when it's about to get worse? And how long, what's the space between when you first start noticing that, okay, this is starting to get worse, your trucker might be an example of, well, I've been driving for an hour and a half, and or 3 hours or whatever it is, and I can be pretty sure that I need to pull over or get a cup of coffee, do something, just walk around a little bit. Okay, so what do you do then? Well, I begin to look for an exit or a place where I can pull in. So what exit could you find for the relief station in your mind?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Does that I get lost.
Yeah. It could be his food. It could be
It's strange trying to look at the screen and see who's talking.
That's all right. We just had somebody join in, their microphone was on. So we also had a request for a demonstration by you, Dan. And then we have a volunteer. Tamalinda experiences neuropathic pain. So I'm going to unmute her. There we go. And
hello.
yeah.
Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Oh, yeah. Lux, so Light.
Yes.
Your name is Light.
That's right.
And what color light is that light?
Yellow.
Ah. And is that yellow like the sun?
No, it's yellow like soft butter yellow.
Okay. You can melt my heart, dear.
It's yellow like Rocky's shirt.
Oh, now I gotta find Rocky on here. Oh, there he is. So what's going on?
So I experience neuropathic pain that goes into my toes and also into my fingers. And sometimes my skin hurts, like when either end is kind of like on it's not fire, it's not a burning sensation, but it's a it's hard to describe it.
I think I know it though.
Okay.
I think
but then my skin will hurt in between, like I could just look at my skin and it'll go, I hurt.
Okay, and if you don't look at it, will it still do that?
It still hurts, yeah.
I'm teasing.
It hurts more if I look at it, yeah.
Okay, so you do have a way of changing it.
Yeah, I have been working on progressive relaxation, which has been helping me at night. But sometimes, like depending on the weather, or there are various triggers. But I prefer not to use medication as much as I do, and some medications don't even touch it.
Well, of course not, because they aren't designed to. Tell me your level of comfort right now.
I would say right now I'm at a 6 out of 10. Oh, 10 being comfort, I'm at a 6.5.
So pretty good.
It's pretty good right at the moment.
Okay. Now, you heard me talk about the pinky pump.
Yes.
And what do you think about that? Can you relate to that? The way
I can relate through a TV show, but I don't know how to use it for me.
Well, have you ever used an old-fashioned water pump?
No.
Okay. What if it's so weird for me because everything's reversed. I move in this direction.
It's okay.
It moves in different directions. When you're comfortable, in your mind and body right now, and you don't have to watch, you can close up. In your mind and body right now, find the most comfortable spot. And as you begin to notice that spot, take the essence of what you recognize as comfort and begin to let it flow down into that little finger, as though your finger were a vial of special medicine, where you put, yeah, that's right. Yeah, put that in there too, because that feels good, right? That little giggle, that feels good, and you can do that. And so you can put that into the little finger, and you can just move the finger enough so that you can actually fill the finger like you were pumping the finger full. And when it gets full, you can begin to pump it out to any part of your body that needs that comfort, that amusement, that giggle. And how would the giggle affect your elbow on the other side? And how would it, I worked with a client once. It was very difficult to had challenges finding comfort in her body, and I went through left side, right side, her nose, her toes, any of these different areas, and finally, I said, "How's your left earlobe?" And again, we can take that giggle and allow that giggle to fill in that little finger, so that you can use it wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if the sensations that you were talking about interfere in any way with the little finger, you can imagine using any other part of your body. When you giggle, your smile is wonderful. And so you can use your smile to store that laughter and store that comfort in different ways, and let it go to wherever it needs to be in your body. You can use your spine as the tree of life and allow it to branch out to any area of your body. Different things that you can do that you know from your own experience can be adapted in this way. And I don't know how quickly you can practice this so that it becomes second nature. But you'll find that in your own time. And when you can anchor that in your little finger or through your spine, just take your time and return and let us know what things you've noticed that you can use.
It works. I'd put comfort up past 8 and into 9 for my left side right now. I have a little bit of pain in my right toes, but it's into the 8 of comfort, so it's not bad.
Well, the toes are the farthest away. Give it a second to get down
Right?
there.
Right? And the earlobe was good. Yeah. I'll just move my earlobe down to my right toes.
Well,
as I go.
have your earlobe talk to the other areas.
Yes.
Look how I feel. Go ahead. Feel this way. Feel this way. Go ahead. Take your time. Feel this way any way you like. And the giggle is just delightful. You can send that anywhere. It's like a candygram for the soul.
Wow, that's cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tamalinda, for volunteering.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was
And
great.
by the way, you can keep that finger thing works in full waking, walking around the house, whatever you're doing. You can always do that. And even if you're holding your cup of coffee, you can just remember the finger, and it doesn't have to move at all. Because all it is the finger talking to other parts of your body.
Well, Dan,
So,
you better, let's hope Pfizer doesn't get hold of your giggle recipe and start marketing it.
well, if they do, I hope they do it with chocolate chips.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I remember Elner used to talk about a lot of these chronic pain clients and chronic issue clients having FDD, fund deficiency disorder. And you know, and we see that people come in, they're feeling hopeless, and then they're feeling helpless after years of dealing with chronic pain and watching their life just shrivel. It can be very isolating. Their friends get tired of asking them to do things and they can't. Their spouses, as loving as they are, sometimes get impatient. And so they can find that even at some point that they don't feel like life is really worth living. And I can't even count the number of these kinds of clients who confessed to me later that they were thinking of ending their lives, which I'm really glad they didn't tell me that up front. You know, we have to,
you would have had to refer them.
right. We have to consider our scope of practice. And that leads me to a question for you. Do you ask the clients, doctors, for permission to work with their patient?
No, is the basic answer. Most of the clients that I work with are not under doctor's care. The exception being cancer and other critical illnesses. But most of the chronic pain, where they've been through the medical model, they're no longer under doctor's care. If they are, I suggest to them that they talk to their doctor when they see them and tell them what we're doing, so that if there's an improvement, the doctor understands that it may be the work that we're doing with hypnosis rather than necessarily the success of whatever medication it is. I have a personal dislike for habitual medication. I think medication can be wonderful. And for acute pain, absolutely. I have my functional shoulder, because I overworked it for 40 years, 40 plus. I have a torn rotator cuff that can't be repaired because they would strap my hand to my body for 6 weeks and I would have nothing. I would not be able to eat or go to the bathroom or get in or out of bed, anything like that. And this is another aspect of what people dealing with chronic are dealing with, is the insurance companies and the doctors and the paperwork that they're expected to be able to do, that paperwork designed by lawyers who want to make it complicated so that you don't bother them. I mean, the insurance motto is delay, deny, and hope they die. So people dealing with chronic that are still under medical, dealing with medical or insurance issues, are also dealing with that frustration, and also the frustration of family and friends trying to look and act as normal as they can, because it hurts their family to look at them. And you mentioned that, you know, not going out on and doing, not going out to dinner or dates or whatever it is, and that the family can get tired of asking because they keep refusing. All these things impact the situation, and we are dealing with, and these are the things that are directly how you feel about it. rather than the actual signal of the discomfort or the painful signals that they're experiencing. So when they begin to get, like I said, the 10% solution, when they begin to find a level that they can change, and with Tamalinda as an example, we played for what, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? And there was a noticeable improvement. Now that doesn't mean that an hour or 2 hours from now she won't have something else, but when that happens, she'll know that, oh, wait a minute, I can pull my left earlobe, and if I pull my left earlobe, it'll change things. Or I can move my little finger, and I say the left earlobe or the little finger because she told us in the beginning that at times the extremities get this sensation. Now I know the sensation from my own experience, and I've always associated it with my circulation. That when this happens, it's because I'm sitting too rigidly, or I have been sitting too long in one position, or something along those lines. And that even if I just change my breathing pattern, it'll change my circulation and the sensations go away. I have a really cool office chair that can make any position feel uncomfortable. But I'm cheap. I'm not going to go out and spend $300 for a new office chair. I'll get up and walk around. So, thoughts, ideas. I was wondering, chronic neuropathy.
Well, Dan,
Thoughts, ideas.
yeah. Dan, it made me kind of think about how often a client might present with something other than chronic pain, and unless they ask about it, they forget to mention it. They're so used to just compartmentalizing it, and I find this is true often with weight loss clients. And when I ask, about their comfort levels, then that opens up that door. And it becomes obvious that pain is really the driver for their unhelpful eating patterns. Or many times they'll say they have to eat at night so that they can sleep because the pain otherwise keeps them awake. And it may not be in their conscious awareness that that's really the thing that hypnosis can help. Have you found that to be true with clients where they're not just presenting with the pain itself up front?
Yeah, hang on. My screen just went wacko. There. For years I insisted on what I do being considered assisting clients with painful chronic conditions. And then I realized that almost all of the clients that we see are coming to us because of a chronic condition, whether or not it is physically painful. And that the same thing, the 10% solution, the pinky pump, the stub toe. Did I talk about the stub? Yeah. That they all apply. And that what we're doing is we're assisting people to recognize their ability to change something right now. And the degree that they can get, the degree of relief they can get is almost immaterial if they recognize it as an improvement, and because it gives back a sense of control. So much of the experience of the client is around the idea that they're out of control. There's something that is controlling their life. And when we can help them establish a a foothold of control in their life, then it begins to change the whole attitude. And you know, the first session, it's startling. It's like, oh my goodness. But in a week or a few days or hours, whatever, they can second guess most of that away. So that's why I say 2 to 6 sessions. You know, they come back and they go, okay, you know, you got some relief last week, and let's see what we can do today. You know, and compounding, I mean, because that's what learning is. I like to look at negative learning as being at least as powerful as anything else. You know, I mentioned, you know, making the pain worse to show that you have control. I would prefer just to say, okay, pull your left earlobe and have that work. But we can do other things.
Yeah, I call that the nocebo approach.
Good for you.
Yes. Hey, Dan, we had a question earlier in the chat room from Dana, and she was wondering if you use regression to get to the original source of the pain, and to help resolve it in that way.
Hard to say. Many of the people that if not most, of the people that I work with are coming about to address physical pain that has a recognizable onset, accident, cancer, surgery, things like that. If there is no known instigator of the situation, then we might. I look at regression and other of the protocols that people use in the context that in our session, if it comes up, or if it's related, it will come up. I don't have to necessarily say, you know, do a formal regression. But when you were speaking earlier and were trying to respond to something, some clever thing that I had said, and you were having trouble finding the word, you went up left with your eyes, and I knew you were searching. So in that, I would say, oh, okay, what did you see there? And that is regression to cause.
Right. Right there, it's happening in the moment. We don't have to have a formal process for it. And you know, there are chronic issues that are what they might even give unexplained pain. And fibromyalgia has been in that category for a long time, although they're getting some ideas about what's driving it and sustaining it. So with these unexplained pains, and I see that a lot with children, because I work with kids and teens, and they've been to the pediatrician, they've even been to the neurologist, and they can't really see any specific source. So in that case, of course, working with kids is great. It's my favorite thing to do because they're in their imagination all the time too. And I don't use regression techniques for kids unless it's for, finding some resource for them. What do you think?
Finding a rubber ball that they lost.
Yeah, exactly. And but your point, and Rocky makes a question here on control. He asks, is there another word than control, since most of the chronic symptoms are up and down, which may imply having and losing control?
the control that I'm speaking of is in our response rather than in changing the signal itself. You got that, Rocky? I saw you nod. Yeah. You know, being out of control in our life is an emotional thing. The sense of being out of control. I cannot control the torn nerves, and I cannot. There are physiological triggers that cold. I don't like cold, and I think that's because when it's cold, my circulation tightens up to keep my body warm, but that tightens the muscles in my neck, which puts pressure on my spine, which causes the pain. Blah, 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 blah. So part of my control is I'll move to Florida. And part of my control is I will make a point of keeping my arm warm. Sometimes I walk around and I tend to like short sleeve shirts, but when it gets to be chilly outside, I dress up before other people. And I lived in Virginia. I had a full body snowsuit, and I would start wearing it in November, and people were saying it's not that cold, and I'd look at them and say not cold at all in here. So control is I have a way to change something that I'm experiencing. I have a way to be more comfortable in this situation. When I'm dealing with the doctors and being on hold for half an hour to make an appointment that'll take 15 minutes, I have the control to put it on speakerphone and do something else while I'm waiting. I have the control to change anything in my life because when I'm in chaos, dealing with the pain because it's constant and unrelenting, when all the difficulties of daily life, whatever they are, it's easy to feel like out of control. And reminding people that they can pull on their left earlobe, they can use their pinky pump, they can laugh for no reason.
I think there's another element to that too, because people do feel out of control when they feel like they have lost choice. And so offering them those choices, just as you did, you can wiggle your toes or you can pull on your earlobe. Giving them that option is very empowering. And in fact, Tamalinda suggested the word power. She said, part of my power is turning up or down the pain comfort dial. So there's lots of different frames that we can use. I think of competence. You were talking earlier, Dan, about how, our clients are learning these things, how the attendees here today have been learning things. And there's that hierarchy of learning that starts us at being unconsciously incompetent, where we don't even know how dumb we are, right? And then we become consciously competent as we learn the skills.
I'm sorry. I just remembered a meme. When you're dead, you don't know you're dead, which is just like being stupid because you don't know you're stupid.
Well, yeah, that's very much, right? So that's where we all start at. And then we start to learn how dumb we are. We're consciously incompetent. And then as we start to get some skills, after we see a great hypnotist such as yourself, then we can be consciously competent in applying these things. And with practice, we become unconsciously competent. And that's our goal. That's our goal for our clients. It's our goal for ourselves in the way that we work with people. And I suspect that the people who have attended here today have really climbed that hierarchy due to the way that you're framing, the way that you work with people, the way you help people. And I know that when I started being turned on by you and by Elner and your ilk, that light bulb went on in my mind, and I was free. Your ilk reminds me of Ogden Nash, the cow. One end is moo, the other milk. Anyway, we're kind of getting to the end of our presentation here today. My voice is going. If you have any other questions right now, throw them at us. But Dan, also, you wanted to make an offer to people who are watching this today?
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably not to visit Florida, but I'm sure that could be part of it.
No, we've got too many people, according to the insurance companies. There's too many people in Florida. So they decided to charge more for everything. If you want to do sessions, I'm available. If you want to do mentoring, I'm available. Normally, my mentoring for other professionals is $250 a session. And you mention this and email me or in the next 30 days or whatever, and I'll give you $50 off. I'm going to be doing a targeting pain teleclass. Now that is 5 sessions, once a week. It's an hour and a half, which usually stretches to 2 hours. There's homework. You gotta get my book and look on Amazon for the book. And when you look on Amazon, you have to actually type in "Targeting Pain" by Daniel Cleary, because until then they want to send you to shooting targets in Bolivia or something. I don't know. And so again, if you sign up for that, I'll put out a notice about that. Kelly said I'll get emails from this call, so I'll send out a thing within the next few days. And if you're interested and want to do that, then I'll give you a discount off of that as well. Is that what I wanted to say?
That was perfect. You did great. And
I didn't even feel your hand up my spine.
No, I know it. That's how good I am, Dan. That's just the truth. And you're fantastic. I love any time that I spend with you, and I know everybody appreciated your insights and your beautiful sense of humor, and just your general approach and perspective on life is delightful. And I love you, and hope to see you in person sometime soon. But in the meantime, we've got technology. Yay. And I want to thank everybody for attending here today and being present, and those that are viewing this later. Consider me a resource too, and if I can help you in any way. And that's it for today.
She's better at this techno stuff than I am. I have been dragged kicking and screaming into technology. I, in fact, like telephones. And talking on the telephone is much easier for me than being distracted by seeing that when I move to my right, my image moves to the left on the screen, and I can't.
Okay, well, we're going to get it. We're going to get
You're laughing, Patty. I see that.
We're going to get a 10% solution for you for that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us